Abrahad Abra, Palas Atina, Rahur, Makashana. These are all names with the same numerical value, and that numerical value is 418, which is 22 times 19. 418 is also the number that is corresponding to the word Chet. Chet Yud Tau, which means fence. And it is also a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's the 8th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And so it calls forth the magician, because the magician's power is seated in Hud, the 8th sphere. And it is assigned to the chariot. The chariot is the 7th trump, and it has the 8th letter, and it sits on the 18th path of the tree of life via the key scale. Now, for those of you who've been following this course, you know that with the principle of proximity, we have corrected a number of the paths on the tree. And we have only encountered one pair of paths that have been corrected so far, and that was the correction between the devil and temperance, which in our system, which is more consistent mathematically, have switched, placing the devil between Tiphereth and Yesod and temperance between Tiphereth and Hud. Now we encounter another case of a swapped path, and this is the chariot, according to the Golden Dawn or the OTO or most of the mainstream modern Kabbalistic tarot sources. Yet we've swapped these out. So our chariot runs here. The chariot in the mainstream sources runs here, whereas we're running it here. So this is our first encounter with a sphere outside or above the abyss. So if you recall, this is the pseudosphere known as Dath, or knowledge. And so far in our work, we've gotten all the way up to this bracing bridge point, this center point. And now we're starting to set the stage for moving beyond the center, beyond the self, beyond strength as we know it. And the first move will be from Tiphereth to Bina. And if you wonder how the proximity principle works, I believe I first talked about it on the path of the devil, so you can check out that video, or you can join my course and you'll learn about it as we go along in order. So what does this mean? We're connecting from beauty, the seat of consciousness, to the understanding, so between 6 and 3. And one thing to note is that 1 + 2 + 3 equals 6. So there's a relationship of mother to child, if you want to go the root of that metaphor. Understanding is the root of science, of logic, of conceptual demarcation of the world. And what this path seems to represent is the first opportunity we have to go from the known into the unknown. So there is a method by which we can bridge the known and the unknown, and it's called scientific understanding, or understanding of how certain things work. For example, how the tree of life fits together, or how magic words function, or how a ritual circle works. With an understanding of these different elements, We gain the ability to compose them in ways that have never been done before, to experiment with new experiences. And in order to encounter whatever it is above the abyss, we have to go beyond the limits of our own familiarity. And the way we do that is not just wildly throwing ourselves into randomness, but it's through what we could call calculated risks. And the Chariot is all about calculated risks. If you think about it, a car is a calculated risk. It's a risk every time you get in it. It's a risk of accident, and what accident basically is what it's a risk of, because you're going at such high speeds. But it's a calculated risk because, assuming you're fit to drive, and you have the skill set, and you know more or less where you're going, you can use a car to great advantage. You can move from immediate perceptions, if you will, to highly advanced or intense perceptions. And in this respect, one could say that psychedelic drugs or psychedelic experiences are like a chariot, in that they progress you so far, so fast, through essentially an artificial means, that if everything goes right, then you have this extraordinary experience. If something goes wrong, then you have more things to worry about. And that's, someone wise said to me recently that his father was a surgeon, said, "Surgery is easy. I could teach you what to do in 10 minutes. But it will take 10 years to know what to do in case something goes wrong." The same thing about the chariot. You can learn to ride a chariot in 10 minutes, but how to respond to the unexpected is what experience of time is about. And you see this happen often. There are myths associated with the chariot. For example, that of Phaeton, who was the son of Helios. And Helios has a chariot, carries the sun across the sky. Phaeton wants to ride his dad's chariot. Father says, no, it's not time. But Phaeton persists and rides it prematurely and pushes it past the limits that he's comfortable with. He can't control it, and of course it goes out of control, and he loses his life as a result. Similarly, the myth of Icarus, which is the son of Daedalus. So Daedalus and his son Icarus were fleeing the maze of Minos, right? This maze that housed the Minotaur, and he'd actually built it. He had designed it, but they were in captivity, and in order to escape it, he built wings out of wax and feathers. He built these wings, and they flew out over what's now called the Icarian Sea. And Icarus famously did not heed his father's warnings. His father said, "Don't fly too close to the sun. Don't fly too close to the sun." And of course, he went too close to the sun, and the wax melted, and his wings fell apart, and he fell into the sea and drowned. So, what does this mean? This means when extending one's speed by artificial means, there has to be an extraordinary kind of sobriety and maturity involved. And the chariot will accelerate the experience of, say, intensified states of consciousness or spiritual development. But it also requires care. And So I start this with this kind of caveat, I suppose, that now that we're making this this move beyond the known into the unknown, we need to really take care, and we need to be clear, I think, of where we're going, and in that respect, the chariot and the road that the chariot are on are part of the same thing. To the point where, why do we have roads? Because we have chariots. Otherwise, we just have paths, right? Why do we have roads? Because we have chariots. Why do we have chariots? Because we have roads. The chariot and the road are two articulations of the same entity, which is the connectivity of distant places through a network that's ultimately linked by the wheel. The wheel is what enables it. And if you think, ever since the third part of the course started, or ever since the wheel, so we've got the wheel, which we know is a vertical orientation of energy, and then we've got the hermit, which is an axle, the staff, so that's that kind of internal silence, external motion, and then we have the strength, which is intensity itself. It's also 8, so that suggests the wheel, right? The Bagua wheel of 8 directions. Excuse me. And so now we see these coming together in the figure of the chariot. And the chariot is a war machine. And the chariot, when it comes up in a reading, of course, implies a hardship, trouble, challenge, but inherently it implies victory. So much so that it's almost the victory is presupposed. So when we build the conditions of victory, the battle comes to us. And then presuming we have that gravitas, right? The composure needed to be the charioteer, then that battle which comes to us, I would say, tempers our victory. So it gives the victory meaning. Of course, the famous story of the charioteer is from the Bhagavad Gita, in which the charioteer, I'm not an expert in Indian mythology, but I know this is a very, very famous charioting story in which he's to go to, I believe it's Arjuna, and he's to go to battle against his own family, and he doesn't, and he's filled with doubt. And then the charioteer turns out to be Krishna, I believe, shows up and says, look at this from the cosmic perspective. You are here to play your role. You are here to act out your dharma, to be your story, right? And restores his confidence. He realizes that while he does not actually, he recognizes the self in the other. He recognizes that the people that he's defeating, that he's killing, are in fact his kin. And yet he, knowing his dharma, knowing the gravitas of the situation, goes to battle and is victorious. So there's something very interesting in this. There's a lot of things very interesting in it, but one of them is this paradox. And I think that the chariot will continuously bring paradoxes to our attention. So the paradox is that we are connected and yet we go to battle, because the chariot is a machine of battle. So that simultaneous gentleness and fierceness. And when you think about it, the chariot is assigned to Cancer, which is a crab. The crab is soft on the inside and hard on the outside. It is a symbol of both gentleness and it's a tank. Speaking of tanks, a tank is simultaneously a car and a road. That's what it is. It's basically someone got the idea of, like, what if we had a road car? The car is its own road, and the road is a car. That's what a tank is. It's an armored road car. It's simultaneously road and car, which is quite an interesting thing, because the road is the line, is the intention, is the knowledge, is the clarity. And the car is the stillness that is in motion. So how do you access the power of the chariot? You become still. And so this also connects us to the concept of the star, because the star, of course, is a chariot. The sun is a chariot moving across the plane of the Milky Way galaxy. We're moving, by the way, towards Deneb in Cygnus. We've got all of our planets kind of trailing around it. We're moving towards Deneb. We find our center, and then we find our composure, and then our singular focus, or our solar light, shines. And there's a conjunction of sun and moon. So there's a conjunction of conscious and unconscious that come together and form an amalgam or an assemblage, where essentially what happens is the chariot forms around us like a field. And interestingly enough, the chet means fence, but it's a fence around a field. So there is an establishment of a field. Rupert Sheldrake talks about morphogenic fields. It might be something similar like to that. Is that or what an old teacher of mine called them, I guess, morphogenic fields, which are not morphogenic fields. Sorry, you would call them mutational fields. Fields within which things change in specific ways. Using I Ching. He was a mutational alchemist. And this idea of establishing a field and occupying the center point in that field, that ejected kind of almost sort of toroidal field, it assembles the tarot fully around itself, and then that tarot, or other systems involved in it, becomes the means by which we filter, the means by which we encounter the cosmos, the deep. Let me read you something, actually. Just jumps immediately to my mind to read this particular passage. Sometimes I go off script, right? But this is from Michel Serres' absolutely brilliant little book on pedagogy called the Troubadour of Knowledge. But in French it's called Le Tiers Instruit, or the third instructed. And it's quite a fascinating little book. Let's see if I can find this. I've quoted this so many times. As I look for it, let's range back to our general discussion, which is basically, in the chariot, we're assembling a center with which we will travel a greater distance by magnitudes. Remember I talked about orders of magnitude? This is when we get into the final order of magnitude of the tarot. And the chariot is the vehicle by which we attain these epic speeds. It involves fractal compression. We've seen this before, where energy systems are explored and then sublimated into another energy system. Well, this is the third order of that. And if you can imagine, if you know the road, if you know the location of your destination, you gather yourself together, all you need to do is say the go word, which is abrahadabra, in order to set into motion the journey. And it could be another word as well. Pallas Athena has the same value as 418, and Pallas Athena is the inventor of the chariot, among other things. And the ship is also a chariot, as is the flying machine, as is the spacecraft. The chariot is just basically the vehicle. Merkaba is a word that comes from Hebraic mysticism. Now we see it in New Age circles because John Vallon Melchizedek popularized it as the stellated octahedron. So the stellated octahedron is an octahedron with tetrahedrons essentially on all of its sides. It's also called the stella octangula by Kepler. And this is used in sacred geometry. You can see an image of it here. This is Metatron's cube, but you can see the Merkaba form in here if you allow your mind to sort of cause it to pop out. It is 2 interlaced tetrahedra. And that's the other thing. It's either 8 tetrahedra glued around an octahedron, or 2 interlaced tetrahedra. And the idea is you meditate on them and they move in counter rotational cycles, and you have a central shaft with the chakras on it. And it produces the flower of life in its dance. This gives us the ability, in a sense, to escape gravity, because a star has has shifted its orientation from above and below to within and without. The star doesn't have an above and below axis so much as a within and without axis. So when you stellarize, which is essentially what happens here, this is the culmination of the stellarization, star alchemy, if you will, where we can effectively re-encounter time as in vectors out from a central luminous point of awareness. And with that, I'm going to read you some Michel Serres. This is what happens when you just decide you're going to grab a book. So I'll tell you a bit about Michel Serres. He's a French philosopher who he was a contemporary of Foucault, Deleuze, and Derrida. And he's interesting because he was very well traveled. Some of these guys weren't. Like Deleuze was not very well traveled. He was very well traveled in himself and in philosophy, but he almost never left Paris. But Serres is different. Serres was a seaman. He was in the Navy, I believe, and he was all he had sailed all over the world. He had a lot of really corporeal experience, and in his writing you get a very strong sense of proprioception and of the immediacy of sense. And effectively, what I'm going to read you is a metamorphosis of consciousness that occurs when you take into account the immediacy of proprioceptive, sensuous encounter with the world, the initiating pre-reflective immediacy, and its effect on time. And it goes like this. Have you ever tended goal for your team while an adversary hurries to take a clean, close shot? Relaxed, as if free, the body mimes the future participle, fully ready to unwind, towards the highest point, at ground level, or halfway up, in both directions, left and right, towards the center of the solar plexus, a starry plateau launches its virtual branches in all directions at once, like a bouquet of axons. This is the state of vibrating sensitivity, wakeful, alert, watchful. A call to the animal who passes close by, lying in wait, spying, a solicitation in every sense, from every direction, for the whole admirable network of neurons. Run to the net, ready to volley. Once again, a future participle. The racket aims for all shots at once, as if the body, unbalanced from all sides, were knotting a ball of time, a sphere of directions, and were releasing a starfish from its thorax. At the center of the star is hidden the third place, formerly called a soul, experienced by passing through a channel that is difficult to cross. The soul inhabits this pole of sensitivity, of virtual capacity, at the same time that it throws itself forward and holds back. That is, that it launches itself halfway, the length of the floating branches of the astral body that explores space like a sun. All directions at once. The future is mimed continuously, and it's only when the present descends upon us that we actually instantiate it. It's not a fatalistic road or a track. It's an infinitude of worlds through which the chariot explores like a sun. And so when we work with the chariot, we gather the entire tarot around us and into this assemblage, into this chariot, this star. And with the tarot, we explore all possible futures at once. And that's truly the secret of it. That's what we do. When someone comes and speaks to us, we select the future, not with our minds and our calculations, but with our connection. We in a way allow the future to birth itself. And so to use a kind of a Socratean type of metaphor, we're midwives of time. And through the craft of tarot, we allow the moments to emerge that have the greatest health. If we're working with a cooperative sitter, with someone who's truly engaged. And so I want you to think of this card, the Chariot, as being a sacred vehicle, a sacred vessel. It's certainly connected to the womb, to the carrying forth of a child. Here is Crowley's charioteer, armored, right? 10 jewels to the Sephiroth, but armored on the outside, crab on the helm. This is the Holy Grail. He would have straight up say it's abracadabra. It says abracadabra up there, but probably means abrahadabra. The Sphinxes, of course, and obviously this chariot is not in motion. They're on the golden road, if you will, the yellow brick road. And their stillness, though, is the potential, right? That this is this kind of miming of the future participle. This potential to move in any direction at once, and yet still. So we gain this access. We gain this extraordinary speed and momentum through stillness. Just like when you're in a car, you're still, right? If you're moving around in your car, that's not good. The crab. What more can I say about the crab? The crab is bilaterally asymmetrical. It's double articulated. So it's got a crusher and it's got a cutter. And it represents a strategy brought to bear simultaneously with two different functions. So another example of this is Hercules' famous slaying of the Hydra, which he cut off the head and then he cauterized the wound. Because the Hydra grows a new head, right? You cut off his head, more sprout up, like 2 more sprout up. So you have to cut and cauterize, so this is how he defeated the Hydra, which is to say he used a double articulation strategy, right? He eliminated the immediate threat and at the same time simultaneously eliminated the future threat. The Hydra strategy can be applied, the philosophy of the Hydra, the Hercules defeating the Hydra, can be applied to bad habits or to addictions in particular. So imagine an addiction. What happens when let's say you've experienced an addiction to something, to anything. Anybody who has been addicted to anything, which is everybody on this planet, has probably at some point tried to stop the addiction through saying, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to exert my power to not do this thing again, right? That's the sword, cutting it off. And I'm not allowed to, text before noon or drink coffee or whatever it is, smoke cigarettes. And everybody who's tried that I would wager, tell you that it wasn't effective. Because what happens is the addiction itself leapfrogs to something else. There is like this energy that needs to be connected, needs to experience an outlet. And so it has an outlet. It's in your coffee, it's in your cigarette. So what happens when you say, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes anymore? You cut off the cigarette, immediately that is going to go and find something else. So the cauterization is the simultaneous knowing once you cut something out that it has to go somewhere else. So people who successfully quit serious addictions, any addiction really, but serious addictions, they know that physical activity is a key. If you start to exercise, that's like cutting the addiction and then supplying an outlet. It's a double articulation, right? You don't just stop, you replace. And so you can actually kind of do an alchemy of moving bad habits towards more and more beneficial habits. But it is a battle, right? And it's dangerous to lose because you lose confidence. And it's dangerous to be too confident because then you overstep yourself. So humility, focus on the present, connection with other people, perseverance, those things are essential for this kind of battle with a Hydra. So addiction can be seen as a Hydra. Now, similarly, the double articulation comes because that's a very strength card. But of course, the Chariot and the strength are really linked, right? Because Chariot is 8, strength is so the Chariot Chet is 8, and strength is the number 8. Remember the overlap, right? They're all overlapping here. The Chariot, as I said, is both road and chariot. It's still and it's in motion. It's simultaneously both. To play with the work of David James Smith, it's open and luminous, right? It is the pure open space, and it's everything in this space simultaneously. As a single reality, not an inseparable double articulation, a paradox, a Mobius strip, and the crab shows us that in their claws. So as we come to terms with this paradox that of motion and stillness, of singularity and multiplicity, of sun and moon, of connection and connection to everything, and the mission of whatever whatever your singularity expresses, right? Whatever the universe is expressing through you, you are responsible for it. So this is why, like you don't let people, like spiritual vampires, to say everything's everything. Let me, I have an equal right to your energy. No, yes, everything's everything, but my everything is is something that I am enfolded in and responsible for. I am in a way the custodian of this particular expression of eternity, which if it dissolves, I have played poorly. So in that respect, if another part of the everything is going to try to destroy me or kill me for whatever reason, I must do battle with it, like Arjuna, right? I must play my dharma, and it's important not to let spiritual language get you into this dualism where you think you have to lower your defenses towards exploitation, because you don't, and moreover, you mustn't. And especially as we go into these higher domains where it is fundamentally paradoxical, that we must appreciate that we carry something sacred into the world that we are the midwife of. We are responsible for. So the charioteer as a martial artist, the charioteer as a warrior, it's very important. And yet the love is at the heart of it, and connection is at the heart of it. So if you can wrap your mind around that paradox, then you're well underway to understand the importance of the chariot. So as a technical device for extending the tarot's energies, there's different ways of approaching it. If you're in my course, then you're already doing this, but this is a tetrahedron ring. There are 8 tetrahedra. The numbers 1 through 32. If you were to assign the 32 key articulations of the tarot, which is to say the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and the 22 paths of the tree of life, then you would be able to see how they could be distributed in these 32 faces of the tetrahedron. 8 tetrahedra, again, assembling around an octahedron. You could produce a Merkaba that would assemble all the tarot energies around it. Moreover, each one of them would have the magical sum 66, which is the sum of all the numbers between 1 and 11, which is the number of letters in the word abrahadabra. And also, if you look at the faces, the corresponding faces across all 8, you get the number 132, which is the word kabal, or to receive. So there's a lot in this. If you're in my course, then we'll talk about it more. We'll build these. This is a way of assembling all the energies of the tree of life into a Merkaba. So there you go. Let's have a look at a couple more of these before we close. I think I pretty much covered everything. You can see, sometimes I see what's called a Yabyum image in the chariot. And I don't know whether it's just in my own imagination when I visualize it. What a Yabyum image is a Tibetan Buddhist image of the Buddha or the meditator, and there's a male and a female version. So they're basically in coitus, right? So they're unified in the act of congress, if you will, and that's something that you can see in the chariot. So the chariot itself can be the act of connection. here is a beautiful example. Again, this chariot appears still, and yet it has the potential to be launched into motion. Notice how the polar card, of course, is temperance. So we're on this sort of special band, right? Because while 14 and 7 equal 21, their difference is 7. So they iterate themselves. And the only other pair than the Fool in the universe that do this. They're the only other isolated pair. So that says something about these cards, about the power and the gravitas of them. But the Temperance card, if you pull the Temperance card, there's quite a lot of similarity. This combination of opposites. And this is going on here too, right? And look here on this crest. That's it, right? That's the wheel and the axle. That's the Hermit and the Wheel of Fortune in Congress, or the lingam and the yoni, and then the winged disc, the solar disc, the hadith point, if you want to call it that, or just the locus of mobile consciousness, right? The astral body that what Michel Serre formerly called the third place, formerly called a soul. Through which we get to, by means of this difficult passage. And this is a difficult passage, but we have prepared for it, right? If you're in my course, we have spent 24 weeks previous building up to this acceleration, if you will. And we're taking this is one of the longer paths. We're launching beyond the abyss, the separation of the known and the unknown. So yeah, you see symbols of the sun and the moon, in particular this star blooming at the brow of this person who is quite androgyne, I would say. So a hermaphrodite would make a lot of sense in the chariot as well. The canopy of stars, right? So the star in the heavens, in the company of heaven, realization of that. So this is now kind of a return to the theme that happened way down when we were building the lower face of the tree, right? Down with the realization of the sun and the star. This is returning now. We've gone through this alchemical process in the middle and the assemblage of the chariot, and now as we build this upper face, there's certain parallels, right? But this is very much a realization of the star among stars. It's not simply a metaphor. It's a reality that we stellarize. That is essentially what this whole process of metamagical alchemy is about, is producing the stellarized consciousness that can experience time moving in any direction, all like a sphere, a ball of time. Right, and so in the Merkaba, the Stella Octangula, we have the stillness that allows us to initiate motion in any direction. I made this one. It's quite a simple picture. It incorporates, of course, the horses that draw the chariot, or the sphinxes. Sometimes I visualize 7 of these for the planets. We'll do a meditation that really focuses on building the chariot in my course. But this is a blueprint for becoming a star, becoming a central eye, a centered, mobile locus of time. Here's Leonora Carrington's. Quite dark, but quite lovely. Tarot of the Holy Light. Always a pleasure to look at. Quite unfathomable in a lot of ways. One of the more mobile ones. I would say that looks to me like Pallas. Look at how, again, the canopy of heaven is, in this case, it's her aura, right? Like, it's the planets, it's the entire, looks like the entire kind of pre-Copernican cosmos there, and there's either a mirror or a gateway to the sea, which you can see the star field is a vast sea, and we're moving to Bina, right, which is the Great Sea. So this Tippereth is in a sense casting forth. We've been in the harbor the whole time, right? We built this boat in the harbor, and now we're setting sail. It's on the 18th path, which bears a connection by the number 18 to the moon. This is very connected to the moon. There are watery cards. Moon is Pisces. The Chariot is Cancer. The womb and the birth canal, respectively. So bringing those two symbols together. Here we have lovely ancient Italian deck. Kind of dude is like striking a funky pose. I like that. Here we have Benabel Winds, and you can notice that the cardinal signs are all on the crest of this knight, highly armored. So there's elements here from Thoth, as well as from RWS. This is a Phoenician letter for, I guess it would be the equivalent of Chet, but it looks like the Chinese figure of the sun. It's a total coincidence, but it's, a Class D coincidence. Doesn't really mean anything, but we can go, ooh, neat. Here we have Visconti Sforza, Pierpont Morgan, and because you can't really see it, but she's holding the orb. This in a way is like the scarab, right? The scarab is a chariot carrying its orb of life. So connecting this again to the moon. I love the winged horses. So this is essentially carrying this precious egg of power to its destination. And of course, like I said, this is fantastic as long as nothing goes wrong. You got to be prepared for it. So don't you get your chariot and go wildly. Wow, I have power. I can go. You gotta do things slowly. This is kind of a sad story, so I won't. But I knew a kid growing up who got a fancy hot car, right? Like I forget what the car was. He got a hot car, and he was dead within a week. So the maturity that's required, and I really mean it, don't overextend yourself with this energy. The maturity, you get everywhere you need to go, but stay sober at the wheel and stay present. When you're on your way home, when you're like, oh, I'm home now, woo, thank God, that is the moment when you should immediately, when you're about to couple with home dock, that's when your alertness needs to go on. The moment, if I can give you nothing else than this, is the moment right before you connect with your goal, in which you are going to release your attention. You're like, whoa. As soon as you detect that, if you remember nothing else from this talk, remember that is the number one red flag point. As soon as you're about to release, in that last few seconds before completion, immediately deny that impulse its play. Take that energy back, double your focus, make the careful connection, complete the action, and there it is. And that's an important thing to understand, because the chariot is a journey, beginning, middle, and end, and that last little bit is where you have to have the utmost attention to detail. So just, it's when you complete anything, right? But just pace yourself so that you have that energy available at that last minute, so that you can enter into the completion phase with the full composure, and then your vehicle will take you anywhere you need it to go. Yeah. So here is a Chariot. It's interesting that this one is coming from the other direction. Chariot is lovely because of its naivety, and sometimes it's just like, wow, that's awesome. In the mouths of babes or whatever. It's just this naivety that has this sublime brilliance in it. I'm not going to go through any more, but I am going to say, take this week to gather yourself. I'm going to make some more videos, especially if you're in the course. I'll show you some new techniques. This week should be about getting all the parts connected and ready and assembled into a mobile unity. And at some point this week, you will say go. Well, in whatever words you use to say go, you will say go. And you will transport yourself from one state practically instantaneously to another state. But we need to know the road. We need to know the cargo. We need to know the state of the vehicle, the state of ourselves. So don't rush the going. Take really good meditative time to gather yourself within your chariot. My name is Dr. Peter Duchemin. This is the Forest of Life Venus Calendar, week 25. And this is the path of the chariot, running from Tippereth to Bina across the great abyss. See you next time.